Here we are in part 3 of our interview with Jack Scharr. And this has some very interesting components of some very interesting projects. In the last segment, Jack, you mentioned Al Order and Bill Toomey, both gold medalists, exhibiting confidence, dedication, and of course, ability. Who else have you come to know on a personal level?
Well, there's a lot of them. When you do events like this, particularly on the scale that we were working, you meet a lot of interesting and very successful people. For instance, Brian Dyson, president of Coca-Cola, he and I became friends and actually did a project together later on. Stephen Briganti, who I had mentioned earlier from the Statue of Liberty Ellis Allen Foundation. We went on with Stephen. The Berlin Wall was coming down and no one was doing anything to celebrate the fall of the Berlin Wall. So I said to Stephen Briganti, I would like to go over there with an artist and do an unveiling of a piece of art to celebrate the fall of the Berlin Wall. And they agreed, you know, if you want to do that, go. So under the auspices of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Allen Foundation, I commissioned Hiro Yamagata, Japanese artist, to do a painting of the Statue of Liberty. We then reached out to, it was right at the anniversary of John Fitzgerald Kennedy's Ich bin ein Berliner speech. And we went to Berlin and we asked Jean Kennedy Smith, the sister to JFK, to join us.
In every nation on earth, the symbols of freedom are cherished. As an American, I am proud that the Statue of Liberty has become an image revered throughout the world. Today, we are fortunate to view the Freedom Painting, a new creation by an artist of extraordinary talent. Hiro Yamagata has been an unfailing friend to my family.
And we had Rod Steiger there because he had won an award for freedom and was there to talk about winning the award and to read a essay about the Statue of Liberty written by Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel was a great writer. He has many books out and was in the Holocaust. And of course, he had really fond feeling to Lady Liberty, the Statue of Liberty, and what it meant when he was under the persecution there in the Holocaust.
I have the honor of reading a letter from Elie Wiesel, a man who has fought for human dignity and the rights of man since he could breathe, I suppose. I now have the honor of reading this statement. 1. I am sorry that I am unable to attend your ceremony. He's ill, I'm sorry to say. Freedom transcends boundaries. So does art, which affirms freedom. This is true everywhere, and especially in Berlin, which repression and mutilation of freedom. The coming down of the wall in Berlin was greeted by multitudes of people thirsty for human justice with joy. It means that what separates men and women must disappear, lest humankind chooses anguish over hope, threat over promise. I wish you all a renewed sense of commitment to remembrance, solidarity, and freedom. Elie Wiesel. Thank you very much.
And we had Cliff Robertson. Cliff Robertson was commissioned to do the movie of JFK, to play the part of the captain, play Kennedy's part in PT 109.
Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect. But we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in, to prevent them from leaving us. I want to say on behalf of my countrymen who live many miles away on the other side of the Atlantic, who are far distant from you, that they take the greatest pride that they have been able to share with you, even from a distance, the story of the last 18 years. I know of no town, no city that has been besieged for 18 years that still lives with the vitality and the force and the hope and determination of the city of West Berlin. While the wall is the most obvious and vivid demonstration of the failures of the communist system, for all the world to see, we take no satisfaction in it. For it is, as your mayor has said, an offense, not only against humanity, separating families, dividing husbands and wives and brothers and sisters, and dividing a people who wish to be joined together.
So what a crew. We had a representative of the Kennedy family, we had Rod Steiger, but we were going to Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin to do this unveiling. And I had everybody lined up, and we had a hard time getting a room. We couldn't get a room. We couldn't book a room there in Berlin at the wall. And so I talked to Hiro Yamagata, the artist, and he said, Jack, tell them the Kennedys will be there. So we did. We called back to the Kempinski Hotel. It was the big hotel right there in Berlin at Checkpoint Charlie. So we called up the Kempinski and said, we are going to be bringing members of the Kennedy family with us. Well, the Kennedy name still in Berlin is huge. He was such a popular figure. And when he made that speech and talked about him being a West Berliner, resonated with all of them. So the Kempinski Hotel called back and said, how many rooms do you need? So we went from not being able to get a room to how many do you need? So we booked the rooms, we got over there, and a very interesting thing happened. I commissioned a group to build a podium at the Berlin Wall so that we could stage the event. And I'm having breakfast the morning of the event with Rod Steiger. And somebody came up to me and whispered in my ear, Jack, they've stopped the construction of the podium. And you know, sometimes you just feel like nobody can stop this event. It's too good. There's no way that this could be interfered. So I wasn't even worried. I mean, it's a funny thing to say, but I wasn't worried. I excused myself from Steiger for a minute and went over to the phone and called the ambassador's office from West Berlin. And I told him what was happening. Went back to my table and sat down. And a few minutes later, someone came up to me and said to me, Jack, they've let this construction start again, and the police are helping, handing boards over to this group, and because they know they've delayed it. And so we went on and had this great event in Berlin, celebrating the fall of the Berlin Wall. And to the best of my knowledge, we did the only event to commemorate the fall of the Berlin Wall. I would also like to introduce this wonderful painting to commemorate freedom, Hiro Yamagata.
By the way, thank you for coming. And the freedom is how important. I grew up from President Kennedy, the freedom when I was a teen. And the freedom, you know, how fantastic and how important for individually. I still now have always this feeling now. So now, please, unveil painting, please. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much.
That was quite a celebration. All the elements came together and imagination became reality. We'll be right back, and we are going to hear about an extraordinary woman.
Knowing how to turn knowledge into wisdom is brain fuel. And you can pour that fuel into your head with the help of Brain Pathways. With the complete Brain Pathways assessment, you will uncover even more parts of your mind. Go to aimyoursights.com/brain to find out what you were created to do. You'll become wiser now rather than later.
When you said yes to this interview and we discussed what you would talk about, and it became apparent we would save the best for last. You have many more stories, but one stood out in my mind. How did you meet Dr. Maya Angelou? And over the course of a few years, you became friends with this extraordinary, talented woman.
That's right. We got to know each other, and I was asked, we were working on a project with the Olympics to dedicate the Olympics to talk about the athlete, to talk about what the athlete goes through in becoming a member of the, in our case, the U.S. Olympic team. So a good friend of mine that we were working with knew Maya Angelou very well and agreed to introduce me to Dr. Angelou. So she did. She introduced me. I talked to Dr. Angelou, and she invited me to come to her home in North Carolina and tell her about what we wanted to do. The Olympic Committee had an idea of a project called Amazing Awaits, to talk about how the athlete, what an amazing process it is for the athlete to come from nowhere and be in the Olympics with a chance to win a medal. So Dr. Angelou liked the idea and was already working with the Paralympic group, loved the Paralympics. And so I flew in to North Carolina, went to her home. She was having a luncheon with a bunch of other people. So she said, Jack, just sit down and join us. So we sat down, we had lunch and talked, and she said, Jack, get up and tell me what you want. So all these people are sitting there, and she wants me to get up and tell her about the project. So I got up and started talking about the Olympics, to talk about the incredible feat of someone joining the Olympic Committee's team and being able to qualify to be a member of the Olympic team. You don't really think about this, but 1 in a million people in the United States have a chance to be on the Olympic team. That's pretty long odds. And so I started talking about that, talking to Dr. Angelou. She reaches down and picks up a yellow pad, which she's very famous for, and starts writing. And I stopped for a minute because she started writing, and she's like, Jack, go, tell me. So I keep talking. I talk about the Paralympics and how able-bodied people that are athletes get injured, have a loss of a leg or a loss of an arm or whatever the injury is, and go on to compete in the Olympic Games, knowing that she loved the Paralympics. And she's writing away, and I'm talking, and I'm going through all this. And I start talking about some statistics, like only 1 of every 30 million people qualify to win a medal in the Olympic Games. And of course, the odds of someone winning a gold medal, it's even greater than that. So the odds of doing all this and competing and being an Olympic athlete that goes on to win a medal is overcoming incredible odds. And she really loved all that, loved the dedication, the ability of a young athlete to move forward and do that. So I kept talking, she kept writing, and when I was finished, she stopped writing. And of course, I was dying to see what she wrote, but she wouldn't show me. So about a month later, I received an email from her talking about sharing what she had written and giving me the poem of what she wrote to show the dedication of the Olympic athlete. So I sent it to the Olympic Committee. They loved it and asked if she would read it on film. So I called her and she said, yes, of course. But now she's in New York, and she had a home in Harlem, New York, second home. And so we all met in Harlem, New York. The USOC brought photographers and video and the whole bit to New York, and Maya Angelou read the poem that she had written. And it was wonderful. And she read it all, by the way, in one take, which everybody's like, wow, that's incredible. And no mistakes, no errors, no nothing. Boom, she reads the whole thing.
Sheer amazement awaits. Amazement luxuriant in promise, abundant in wonder. Our beautiful children arrive at this universal stadium. They have bathed in the waters of the world and carry the soft silt of the Amazon, the Nile, the Danube, the Rhine, the Yangtze, and the Mississippi in the palms of their right hands.
Dr. Angelou was an incredible person, and she and I had become friends. She invited me to an event she was having at Southern Illinois University near St. Louis, knowing that I lived in St. Louis. And she gave one of her performances there. She just could get up and talk, and people were just mesmerized by Dr. Angelou. She had come from nothing to become this great, great poet in the world. And she worked at the UN as an interpreter, all self-taught. She had received, I don't know how many honorary doctorate degrees, and she was an actress as well, and was in the movie Roots. So you name a project or a category that someone could be good at, she was good at it. And just went on with this fabulous career.
You said she unabashedly believed that Jesus Christ was her strength and the source of her talent, and she said so on many occasions.
Well, Dr. Angelou always had something that we all wanted to hear. We were together in New York, and we were presenting her an award at the Cristobal Gabaron Foundation. Gabaron is a big, probably the number 1 or 2 ranked Spanish artist in the world. And they own a facility in New York City, and a fabulous facility in New York City. And so we were there to present this award to Dr. Angelou. And she was so nice and so welcoming to everyone around. Couldn't be nicer to everyone, but loved. Cristobal Gabaron had created a sculpture. It's kind of a very contemporary angel, which Dr. Angelou loved. And her name, Angelou, means angel, pertains to angel. And she loved this sculpture. So we ended up doing the poem that she wrote in conjunction with first a painting of Gabaron's, and then the angel, the sculptural angel, which we presented to Dr. Angelou. And actually, we presented 2 to her, 1 for each of her homes. And she just loved these things. She loved people. She loved helping, and wanted us to go on and do another project with her for the Olympics. By the way, the poem she wrote for the Olympics went on to be recorded and given to every national world governing body of the Olympic Games in the 2008 Games in Beijing, China. So her work really reached out to the world to show the world what she had written and how important the Olympics are and how important the athlete is.
They were all focused, they were all very sincere, and they were all dedicated to what they did. Dr. Angelou was dedicated to her poetry. Bill Toomey was dedicated to his sport. Al Order, how could you be more dedicated than what he did to overcome all the problems he had?
Well, they were all focused. They were all very sincere. They were all dedicated to what they did. Dr. Angelo was dedicated to her poetry. Bill Toomey was dedicated to his sport. Al Arter, how can you be more dedicated than what he did to overcome all the problems he had and to win 4 gold medals? So dedication, focus are big parts of getting anything done on a world-class situation. Even some of these artists that have reached the heights to be included in some of these projects, like the Carnegie Hall project, when you're talking about Lichtenstein and Rauschenberg, they're the top of their game. Their paintings now sell for millions of dollars. But they all have achieved these great heights through focus, dedication, and this basic ability. You have to have the ability to start, but they use their ability to the best that they can do. Bill Toomey told me that he went into at the Olympics in 1968, and there was a young man who ran the 100-yard dash. And Bill was rushing to get ready to go out to another event, and this guy's 100-yard dash event was going to happen in just a few minutes. And the guy was still in the room, and Bill said, "What are you doing? You've got to be on the field." And he said, "I don't feel real good. I don't think I'm going to compete." Bill said, "This is an event that happens once every 4 years. You don't not feel good. You get yourself together. You make yourself feel good. You go out there and you compete and you give it your all." The guy didn't go out. So all that was wasted. All this ability, all this training, all this everything was lost because he didn't follow through there at the end.
Jack, this has been a real treat. Thanks for taking the time to recall all these wonderful examples of determination and commitment, both necessary ingredients to reach the highest levels of achievement. And all of these people that you've talked about today certainly did just that. And for those of you who have enjoyed this interview, let us know. And let us know how we can serve you. Thanks for listening.
Knowing how to turn knowledge into wisdom is brain fuel. And you can pour that fuel into your head with the help of brain pathways. You can take charge of your own purpose and discover what you genuinely want in life by using this helpful download. Try to visualize a special time when you achieved greatness. Now, think if there is a little voice inside your head that gives you courage. And also consider what makes you feel excited. With the complete Brain Pathways assessment, you will uncover even more parts of your mind. Go to aimyoursights.com/brain to find out what you were created to do. You'll become wiser now rather than later.